Hello and welcome. I am so excited to jump into this awesome material, and we have so much to go over. I'm just sending out the last minute texts, but I'm glad you can be here, and we've gotten to dive into the first couple chapters, aka 22 chapters on Audible. So I hope that was clear. But it's the first two chapters of the book, and it is so fun to go through this material. And I have like a prop today. It's these awesome glasses I found. And these glasses are actually fantastic because they turn every little spot of light into hearts. But it made me think of why I love Allison's work so much, because it's like I was walking around with these glasses that turned like men into lesser beings. Whenever I looked, I was like, oh yeah, he's lazy. See, he's not, he's a jerk. See, and I had these glasses that were kind of filtering all of my experiences with the opposite sex. And so I love that Allison has helped me to take these glasses off and help me to see men with so much more love, so much more compassion. I'm hoping that that gives this class also brings that experience to you and also to ourselves. Like learning about women all it gives women compassion for ourselves and learning why we do the things we do and learning why men respond to us in the way that they do and for men to more fully understand us. So I definitely think that this has should be a prerequisite to relationships for both men and women. But look, my dad's even on here. How awesome is that? So speaking of wonderful men, well, we are going to jump in, and I wanted to invite all of you to turn on your cameras if you can, so we can see your beautiful faces and know who's on here. And I want to hear people's shares and comments. If I can ask that you keep your shares and comments to like 1 to 2 minutes, that would be really great, so we can stay on track. But I love the interaction, and I think that's the biggest benefit of being in the class is we get to hear from all of you and how you're utilizing this and how you're seeing this in your own life and having shifts. So just as a review, last week we went through um, the intentions of this class. So we went through what we want, why we're in this class, what you want, how you're going to show up each week or do the home play or find someone to talk about this with, have the conversations with loved ones that you have in the workbook. But it's all here for you to benefit and to utilize. So I really hope that you can kind of just get clear, make sure it's on your calendar, all of those things. And then last week we also went through the hunter and gatherer and what the difference is and had some amazing conversations. So if you haven't watched the replay of that, then I definitely recommend that you do that. So today we're going to go through more about the hunter, the gatherer, the single focusedness or the diffused awareness, and then communicating between the sexes. So it's going to be super fun. And before we jump into all of that, I would just love to hear anyone's experience of learning this, implementing it, any ahas that you had this week in taking the insights of hunter and gatherer and applying it or seeing it through new glasses, new lenses, right? We're seeing, oh, that's hunter behavior, that's gatherer behavior.
One thing that I really found is the awareness of just the difference between the diffuse awareness and the single focus. With just even looking at myself and not even understanding that other women have that single focus or that diffuse focus, I guess to give myself the grace that I'm not so crazy as I thought I was. And because we're, and just the comments, I mean, of I guess looking at men and going, wow, you're lucky. You're only thinking about one thing at a time, because learning to rein in the 9,000 thoughts that are running through my head, whether it's at work or anywhere. I mean, anyway, it's learning to give myself the grace for even learning that about myself.
Thank you. Jolene and I were just at the women's retreat that we just had in beautiful near Zion National Park, and there were 21 women. So talk about diffused awareness, talk about open to possibilities, and so beautiful to see how fluid a group of women can be and how lovely it can be to share in that experience of kind of the way that women really do have that superpower of being open to possibilities. And one of the men in the book, he says, how do you get anything done? And I think Allison's response was really cool, because she said, well, it's men actually, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And men look at women like, oh my gosh, how could you get anything done with having a brain like that? And we look at men and go, oh my gosh, like how how do you just sit and do nothing or whatever it is? Like we just see each other and go, what the heck? My brain's exploding. But the beautiful part about women is if we come across like a barrier, we can easily just pivot and go, oh, like we'll just move on to the next thing, right? And with men, there's a lot more frustration that happens when they're so one track minded and committed to the outcome that if they can't fix the door, they'll go to the hardware store 7 times in one day so that they can fix the door. Women would just be like, oh, okay, like we're going to go and fix window now, or we're going to go and wash the dishes now. So we kind of are fluid. And so I'm curious if anyone else kind of sees that in your own life, or experiences the frustration, or experiences the overwhelm. And those are the two kind of opposing emotions. And when women are in hunter mode, we can experience the frustration, right? It's a lot, it's similar, but it's definitely a different experience to be in the feminine brain, where understanding that Allison says, is there a like what do they focus on? It's like literally don't focus on anything. It's diffuse. The focus goes everywhere. It brings in all of the tiny little details. So are there any other shares or comments about that, or about the hunter and gatherer, where you see this in your life?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on that. One of the things as a female, I don't multitask like a lot of women do. I tend to not complete tasks. I'm all over the place, but I don't tend to complete tasks. So anyway, it was just interesting that I've watched other women be successful, watched other women do that, and I couldn't. So it actually created a place where I could point at me and say, I'm not good enough.
And I'm so glad you bring that up. And we're going to talk about that in a couple weeks. It's called The Perfect Woman.
Well,
and
yeah,
the way that we always have this part of us that's always comparing us to all the other women who are doing it. But really, it's comparing it not just to all the other women, but it's the very best parts of every other woman. And it compiles this magnificent, perfect human that we get to compare ourselves to at all times. And so it can be really overwhelming, right? And the overwhelm is a big part of what causes that inability to complete projects. And today we're actually going to discuss how to help a woman get out of overwhelm. And it's kind of a great tool to have in your toolbox for that. And so a lot of this is, yeah, like, are we taking this information and then comparing us to other women, or saying, oh yeah, I'm too much in my masculine, or too much in my feminine, or whatever, or just saying, like, where do I want to be and how can I get there? Or or what kind of things can I do to empty my basket or to zone out or that kind of thing. So I
Well,
love.
I would like some of these characteristics. I'm a woman. I want some of these characteristics and I don't have them. And I'm like, how come I don't have them? Does that mean that I have more testosterone maybe in my hormone balance structure? I don't know. So it's not necessarily just the comparison. It's just that I can feel that I'm lacking this and I don't like it.
Awesome.
I want that anyway. But and
Love
also
it.
on the book, understanding how the book goes because I have an audio disc. I
Yeah.
have no idea where I am. I mean, I have no
So
clue.
I will show you in the and I think you're in your car, but I will show you um in the book here. You'll
Oh,
look, and
okay.
every week I have each section that her chapters are different than in the audiobook. So I've told you like her chapter 1 is chapters 1 through 7. And then her
Okay.
chapter 2 is chapters 18 through 14. So
Okay.
you can just listen to those and you'll see that like um
I
in
don't think she doesn't state the chapter or the new section starting. She doesn't say
she does
chapter
this
one.
one, she says to summarize
Oh,
chapter
yes.
2,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then she goes on. So I just marked that and I listened through it and gave you those
Okay.
chapters. So that's how
Got it.
you're going to know that. And
Thank you.
so just look in the workbook to know where we're at, but it's on this page of the workbook. So
Okay.
that's great. And then in response to what you were saying about being masculine and being feminine, I think it's a really good point. And she brings this up where men are typically born with a certain amount of masculinity and femininity. And it's just part of them. And how she defines that as the feminine is the innate desire to beautify, to create, to make things more like that's kind of how she defines this feminine attributes of and not to be like if a man is super creative he's feminine, he just has like more of the traits of creativity and wanting to beautify things around him. And then but for women it's more of how we were raised, how society praises us. So a lot of it is just our instinct of pleasing that defines whether we're going to be act more masculine or feminine. And so as we see the benefits and we learn about the benefits of the feminine, then we actually can step into more femininity if we choose. And so it's what I would suggest is to look for feminine ways of being and not to say, oh, she's like that and I'm not, but to step into, wow, I love that way of being. And so I'm going to try it out and see how it feels. And also, there are people that just have more testosterone. And when you have more testosterone, you can focus single handedly on one topic for longer, more naturally. And so it's okay. Like, it's totally fine to have more testosterone or more masculine attributes. And there's pros and cons to both. So it's not like if you're not as feminine, it's not as cool or something. Like it's all beautiful. So I'm gonna let Judy share. She had something that she wanted to share with us.
Actually, it was about the testosterone and the what is oxytocin or that
Yeah.
for the. And so I've been observing other women this week and the diffuse
Diffuse awareness.
yeah, and it's really interesting to just study that particular, just take that and do the single focus on it, and myself as well, to just see how it runs in me, how it runs in them. It actually makes me kinder, right? Because like if you're on a project or if you're at work or if you're there, just to notice that that's what's happening rather than it's about the person, right? It's just like, oh, this is diffuse awareness. Like with my boss, she's all over the place and she gets it done, right? she's not all over the place and doesn't get it done. She's all over the place and she gets it done. So it's also learning how to dance with each other, right? And it's made me one, more aware, but more considerate, and not having defense mechanisms put up against it. It's not a comparison about, oh, it should be done this way or it should be done that way. It's just noticing how it gets done. And that's been really fun to observe. And it makes much more space in the interactions, because I can go very focused on a task, right? And if someone else isn't focused, then it can make me grumpy, right? And then when I get grumpy, then I get mean. And if I get mean, I say things that I don't want to say. So backing it up to my benefit, it just goes like, oh, step back for a minute and notice what's going on, where I am and where they may be.
Yeah, applying it, the stuff, right? Like, I love how this is the point, is that we're taking this into our lives and applying it and having a different experience of ourselves. And if we're doing that, we're winning, you know? Like, that's so great. And if this is helping us step into more kindness, more compassion, more wisdom, like this is the point. So I love that. Thank you so much, Judith. And Robert, yay, we get to hear from you.
I had this wonderful experience after our call last week where I went to the grocery store to get something, and I experienced myself being in that single focus, and just how super cool that was. Like, it was energy given, like on task. It was almost like I had blinkers or blinders on, like they put on the horses and stuff. And I'm just going down the aisles and I'm just tracking, I'm hunting what I wanted for. But the thing about it was just how much of this beautiful energy I had because I was single focused rather than having my brain going all over the place. So, you know, accidental learning about women, learning about men, and understanding that. On the other side of it, I have a friend of mine who's going through she is going through something really, really difficult. And then just being in this place where I, as a friend, try to support her, and realizing in certain cases that there's nothing that I can do except observe how much pain she's in, you know, and be compassionate about it. And use whatever tips and tricks that I've learned in here. Honestly, I love this person. Yesterday I had an experience with her because not only is she grieving, but she's going into her period at the same time. So she had both of these things going on. And I felt like if she could reach through the screen and bite me, she might have. But to give her amazing, amazing credit, she is the type of woman that doesn't, at least with me, take it out on the other person that she's talking to, which is a beautiful thing. But yeah, it was helpful. Knowing that there's only so much you can do was also helpful. I don't put a burden on myself that doesn't belong on me.
Oh, I love that, because so much of the masculine wants to fix, and what's the point? What's the problem? Let's solve it. And in that space of listening, especially to an overwhelmed woman, is so much of just listening to this very report that Allison talks about, right? You're just listening to her overwhelm and hearing her and listening, and it's a very generous space to be in, especially in the masculine, to be there. Like, it's painful, and it's also like for you to see her with compassion and go, wow, she's got so many things going on, and for you to just be that solid masculine support of a listening ear can be hugely, like, what a gift. What a gift. So thank you. Thanks so much for sharing. Bill, yay.
Okay. I was just going to add on to that. You know, it's more challenging to deal with some of that when you're in a close marriage type relationship. When you're talking to a friend or someone else, it's easier to be neutral about what's happening and to just listen, because you're not as close and you're not as affected emotionally or whatever way. But when what you're hearing is directed to you, there are things said that would never have been said otherwise, but you kind of just lose control, and all of a sudden all kinds of things can come out. And where that's the challenge, is to stay neutral, and not let yourself react to what's happening. One of our mentors said, well, when I get that way, before I go into the house, I go out in the yard or stay in my car and I just yell it out and get angry, get it all out, so that when I walk in the door, I don't have to dump my toxic stuff on those that are closest to me. When men are single focused, but when you have everything around in your environment going through your mind all at the same time, and it's like, oh, what do I pick and choose on right now? Okay, let me stay focused on this. Oh, but that's going on. Oh, but this is going on. Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, that's more definitely challenging for women, and it's so helpful to understand that that's what's happening, because you can have so much more compassion and patience and understanding when you realize that that's just their nature. It's even more challenging for them to try to deal with all that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. And I really loved Allison's suggestions around this, because for the invitation for women to limit the Berry report to men, like especially with your partner, it's recommended that you don't give the Berry report every day. And when she taught this to her husband, he said, wait, like how long? She said, how long do you think men can listen to the Berry report? He said 20 minutes if you're dating, right? And
Yes.
I think that's really brilliant. And then he said, but wait, I don't think you give the Berry report. And she said, no, I don't. But I do choose the 2 or 3 things that I think you would be interested in and that are most important to me, and I share those, but I don't give the whole Berry report to you. And so on a regular basis, that's not the role of your partner to be your Berry report listener. That's other women or other people in your life, maybe a friend on Zoom that you can't reach out and scratch. Like, these kind of people are the ones to do the Berry report with when you're really overwhelmed. But if that's the person that is there for you, we have in class 3 a whole entire communication script around how to share when you're really hurt, and those communications can be really healing, and it is important to have those hard communications, and it's separate from the Berry report. Now, this is kind of perfect segue into the next part, where it's about emptying the basket. One of the things with masculine and feminine is the masculine, because he has one aim, one thought, that frustration is what typically gets to him. And that frustration is a whole aspect of learning about men and masculine and understanding men course and everything else. But this aspect of the feminine is because we have this diffused awareness and we're gathering all the berries all day long, everything in our entire awareness and environment, and even all the feelings and experiences of people around us, we're experiencing that, and we're bringing it into our basket all day. And that experience of being in feminine can cause overwhelm. And usually, considering how much women are taking on all the time, like, how amazing are women that they can take on all this information, and the majority of the time they're not even overwhelmed. And we have our own ways of dealing with it, but sometimes we get into this place of we're too full. And so this is a great formula for conversation when we want to share our overwhelm with someone, and we basically need to teach people how to listen to us, and especially the masculine, because the masculine can typically, if ask, be listen with the filter of what's the point, and if there's a problem, if everything's okay, and if everything's not okay and there's a problem, what's the problem? How can I fix it, right? And so if we ask clearly and say, you know what, I would love you to help me, to save me from too much input. My basket is too full and I'm feeling overwhelmed. And honestly, there's no point, there's no problem in being full, and you are solving it by just letting me empty my basket, by holding the trash. And so you don't have to remember anything. In fact, please don't, unless I tell you that I want you to remember this part. But you're not going to be tested. And when there's a pause, don't jump in. Please don't try to give the solution or the answers. Just wait for a moment. And if I pause and there's a beat and I take a deep breath, you can ask anything else. And for men, like, this is asking a lot. I know that this is not something to, like, or even for a woman, if I'm listening to someone and for me to like be in this place that's not comfortable to listen to someone's problems and listen to all the things that I can see even a solution for, but they just need to get it out, then asking the question, is there anything else? But eventually it's like a defrag process. And if you had to stop on every problem in defragging, you know, your computer, that would take a heck of a long time, right? But instead, it's just allowing her to release, release, release. And you, at the end, there's going to be this, and she'll probably reach out and touch you or cuddle with you. And you'll say, is there anything that you want me to remember from that? Or is there anything you want help around with all that? And if she can be a yes or a no to it. But you are going to get lots of points for this. So you will be appreciated. It's really just a process of recognizing the gatherer and how she gets overwhelmed. And then she needs to kind of dump out her basket. If this is not something you're up to that day and you're like, you know what, my basket's full, my overwhelm, my frustration is here, and I can't be that for you. Like, can you talk to your sister, or can you talk to your best friend today about it? And that's a fair request as well. It's partnership, it's deal making, it's figuring out win-wins, right? So it's just having compassion and knowing. So Judy, you have a comment.
It just occurred to me when you were talking about that I have to change the word in my head that they're complaining. Because if I have it in my thinker as they're complaining and I don't want to listen to their complaint, it's a whole lot different than knowing that they're full and they're just emptying the trash. So I'm going to have to change that in my thinking. And then also the timing of something. You know, it's when is the right timing to even empty your basket?
I think all of us could take a deep breath and go, okay, she's not complaining, she's unloading her basket. Like, that's a really powerful point, that we're changing the languaging in our heads about what's going on.
The timing, whether it's a good time for somebody to or listen to them. So that makes a big difference with whether I'm available or not.
I love that. And probably before, and I may put this into the workbook, is before having this conversation, what I would do is say, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. My basket's overflowing. Do you have some time? When would be a good time that I could just let go and have a good conversation, like, and tell you about what's going on for me, right? And that gives him the opportunity to respond and say, you know what? I'm in this track vision right now. In 5 minutes, I can focus on you. Boom. But if you come in and he's track focused and he's on one task and you start unloading your basket, are you going to feel listened to? No way. He's going to be frustrated because he's trying to do this and he can't because now someone's talking at him. And you're going to be totally misunderstood, which is then going to add something else into your basket rather than the experience of unloading. One other thought on all of this for me, I don't have someone to like do this on a regular basis, but I'm sure I do this with girlfriends or my sisters, but I have a junk journal. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just write, sometimes even on a piece of paper like this, stuff I can throw away. It's not something again, no one's ever going to read it, listen to it ever again. But I love my junk journal when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I write everything in, and that gives me the experience of emptying my basket. And so that's something to try out. Some people are more verbal. I'm super kinesthetic, so that works for me. I don't have to do this with another person as much as perhaps some other people. So yeah, Kira loves her junk journal too. And Kira also made a comment about how like so many women are diagnosed with ADHD because of this diffused awareness. And if we're in a super masculine environment, we're like, oh my gosh, he's doing that. Like I must have ADHD. I can't focus, right? And so that's something to kind of just take consideration of seeing ourselves with more compassion and not comparing ourselves to other people to diagnose ourselves, I guess. But anyway, we've got these men are so involved. I love it so much. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I just going to add a little bit of an aside, but it's along the same line, and that is that we all have both men and women, we have a tendency, particularly men, to want to solve problems. Right? As we communicate with each other, both men and women, if we can assume first of all that we're not there to solve a problem on either end of that conversation, unless that's specifically asked, gee, I want you to help me with this because I need your input. And if it's not that specific, I think that's what Julie and I find is we have to be very specific. And if we really want to have answers, we really want the other person's input is what we're sharing, then we have to be very specific to say, yeah, that's what I want right now. Other than that, every other time, it's just listening. It's just listening. And it's just to be there. And I think if we can understand that, both men and women, we're there just to listen and not to solve any problems unless that's specifically requested. And that would help our communication.
I love that. I learned early on that I don't want to be married to my coach. You don't. And so having someone that's just trying to fix all your problems and solve the issues in your life is actually not very as supportive as you would think. At first you're like, yeah, I want someone that can just coach me and tell me all. No, it's actually not a pleasant experience. So yeah, I love that. Just on like really coming to that agreement and being in communication around that we're here to listen to each other with compassion. And if you want a problem solved, specifically ask for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be a listening ear to you and love you unconditionally. Like that kind of agreement is really beautiful. So thank you, Bill. I love that.
Because of what you just said, that thing about being a coach, I kind of feel the same way, but there's a difference between being a coach and being supportive, I would think, but that was just the thought that came up in my mind. But the reason why I raised my hand was because I was thinking about, and as everyone was talking, I was just thinking about the whole dumping in the garbage, the stuff into the bucket. And I had this feeling of them just needing to get stuff out, women just needing to get stuff out, and the content of what's coming out not being super important, more the process of getting it out. Because there's a couple of things to look at. There's the, okay, this just needs to be vomited out and I'm here for that space. There's the element of what qualifies as gossip. There's the element of what qualifies as speaking as dishonorable, and an element of what qualifies as being abusive. All of these different things. And I guess for me, this was the things that coming out, and the answer to the question of myself, I think it's just spending time with women and having enough experience to be able to make the distinctions over time, because right now I'm not sure how easy that would be for me.
Well, I love this point because in a basket doesn't mean I'm going to tell you everything you did wrong and put everything on you of how my bad experience is, right? And so it's a really great distinction, because if you are practicing this method and saying, hey, I really want you to just hold space for me, well, I unload the overwhelm, and there's no point, there's no problem. My basket's just full. If you can just hold space, hold the trash, empty, like, then you don't have to remember anything. That doesn't mean that you can jump into pointing fingers and making it like, this is about staying in your business and making sure that you're not making it about the person you're talking to, like emptying the basket with, right? And that's just, it's taking advantage of someone's goodwill. It's hurtful. It's really, it could be called abusive, right? What? You have to listen to me. You shouldn't remember anything. You shouldn't take any of it as important, but I'm going to tell you all the ways that you suck. Like, that's not what we're teaching here at all. But if it's like, the kids were all screaming today, and the kitchen's a mess, and I told you to do it, and now I have like 3 classes that I'm teaching that I'm not prepared for, like that kind of thing. Just saying, like, look at what's on my plate. There's a lot in my experience of like wanting to be witnessed, and also one thing that I've heard Allison talk about is when her husband would come home, she's like, I'm going to show you like what I've gathered today or what I've done today. So she's like, I changed 7 diapers, I cleaned the dishes, I made 4 meals, I vacuumed the floor, like whatever she did, because really he'd walk in with his single focus and not know that she did a single thing all day, right? And so there's a bit of a Berry report that is really beautiful among the partnership, so that you can say like, hey, I want to be witnessed and seen and acknowledged, and like, I'm overwhelmed because I did these 17 things and I still have all of these things to do. Or if you're saying it to manipulate and say I want help with something, then just saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed and I've done so much today, and I'd really love it if you clean the dishes tonight, would be a much kinder communication than having him sit through a 20-minute Berry report and then asking him and almost guilting him into it, So it's a great conversation of like, how can we use this, and what does it actually mean, and what does it absolutely not mean? But the fact is women get overwhelmed. And if can the women just put your hands up? Like, there's an overwhelm that happens. It's part of just being in the feminine, and that's not to say men don't get overwhelmed. Like, I know you guys have things pile up and pile up. Yeah, like Dan or Austin, what is your experience of the feeling of overwhelm? I'm curious to just get some other insights.
Yeah, I mean, definitely very real. For me, it might show up like if I have, you just said things piling up, like there's some things that I know I need to do, and they're kind of in the space, but I'm not really doing anything about them. Then it starts to back up. And then I hit this like point where then I'm like, okay, I got to go into this mode of focus to kind of get this stuff taken on. But if I could also mention something when you said earlier about the, like this report is not the grounds to start bashing on the other person or whatever. I just realized that's where I struggle with it, because I feel like I'm a really good listener. I could be a good space holder. And I just realized like there's something that triggers me though, because sometimes like something goes over the line and I'm not like catching it when it's going over the line. So maybe that's like a boundary thing for me to kind of work on, of like, because then with the listening and the space, it might dump into, it's encroaching on things that, let's say, that affect and that maybe I'm managing and I'm responsible for. And then I start taking that like, hey, wait a second, now what's the problem? Now there's something wrong and it's got to be fixed. So I go right back into all of those things. So there's this dance that kind of happens, and it's really topical kind of. It's the topics that are being talked about for me, and it can kind of, okay, I could be space holder because this doesn't affect me. But if it's stuff that affects me, oh, it's a lot different. So just an awareness. that.
I love that. And like I would even adjust the form to say at the end if there's any like first of all, if it has anything to do with the other person in a blame, shame, like you didn't do this and you added to this overwhelm, it's to be kept out of this part of the barrier report. If it's an ouch, you hurt me, that's another conversation and another formula. But this one is just, if it doesn't have to do with them, if it has total space for just, I just need to unload. And then also at the end going, and I'm like asking a very clear request. If there is something you want that person to do, you can ask that and make that clear request at the end. And I don't know, I think that would be like a good addition to the emptying the basket barrier report experience. Yeah, and I could tell you were in the middle of an amazing story or something. There was like something
I
really
was
awesome.
unpacking something to continue.
So good. Yeah, go ahead and share. What did you guys figure out, or any questions come up during your breakout session?
But can I just share this? Like in the opposite of the barrier report for me, from a male perspective, I find that with women, I have to like preface the, okay, I have something to talk about here. Can you give me like 5 minutes uninterrupted? Because I find that I'll start, and in my style, I kind of start and I might pause. But as soon as I pause, they jump in, they want to like take it in a different direction. And then I'm like, oh man, my point was here, and now we're over here, and I got to get back. So I just want to unpack this. So can you give me like 5 minutes? I'm just going to tell a few things, listen, and then ask me questions, comment, objections like later, just so I can get this unpacked, because I find that I can't get to the point that I have to get to without getting pulled away. So I have to ask. And if I ask, it's good. If I don't, then we go in different places and I might get frustrated or just forget to get back to the point.
I love that so much because it's like so natural the way that women communicate and men. Like with women, it's so much of this like I've just noticed with my sisters, we just yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, and we interrupt just in a way of like, oh, I get you kind of feeling. And when my sister interrupts and goes, oh yeah, I totally agree, like this happened to me, I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, remember that, and we're doing this. But with men, like I've learned that like they're 5 minute kind of statements of their reality can't be interrupted, or it gets really frustrated because it's kind of this like this frustration that happens that
I think we some of us need that
body,
talking process. We have to talk it through to get that, communicated. We can't just, I guess you might say, well, why can't you just say it in like 10 seconds? Well, no, I need to actually develop this. It's got to be developed.
Yeah, and there's a reason why you are creating this entire 5 minute monologue, because it has like a certain pattern, and even the oh, yeah, totally is an interruption. Yeah. Like for women, that's not an interruption. It's a like, oh, I'm on the right track. But so I love that. That's a super great addition to the conversation. And like this is the barrier report, but there's also communication and how you want to be heard. Like if we started beginning our conversations with this is how I want to be heard, that's pretty cool, right? So were there any like yeah buts, or I would do it differently, or how this would shift for you? Robert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I experienced something along the lines of what Dan is saying. And for me, when I'm going down there, first thing, there is a point. So what, as a guy. But secondly, for me to connect to that, I need the quiet, I need the concentration to connect to my feelings. Women have the feelings right there and it's like boom and everything can come out. But the guys need to focus more. They need to hold themselves. It's just like women need that extra energy to hold themselves into single focus versus diffused. Well, sometimes guys need to hold that focus to stay connected to the feeling and find that course to get it out of our brain. And if you interrupt, it's like all of a sudden it's like, I had this little thread and you freaking thread, and I don't know if I can get back to the thread now. So that's kind of what it feels like on my side. It's like anyway, and then the second thing that I mean I've found that I do and I've learned to do, and it's probably the feminine the one of the feminine aspects that I have is that I have friends that are like, look, I just need to vent, and it's like just vomit everything out and like for 15 minutes or whatever time, because I just need to get this energy and this extra gunk out of my system, you know. So, but I preface it by that. It's like, hey, get 15 minutes so I can vent, you
Yeah,
know,
and I
and I preface it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And Becca pointed out, like, what if that 15 minutes turns into 30 minutes? And I gave that 5 minutes or that 10 minutes, and I agreed to that. So what if it's not? And so that's a really big thing about all of this as well, is what if it just goes over? So I think, like, first of all, as women or the person that requests the time, it's important you put a timer on. Like, it's just to honor that person and to give respect to that person and say, this is what I'm doing. Put a timer on and say, I'm literally going to put a timer on and I'm going to just talk to you. Now, with the masculine, I found, especially with the partner I had over the last few years, it was so crucial to him to have the space to just talk out his thoughts. And so it helped me to see, and I asked him, like, what does talking to me and sharing like all these things give you? And it was like, oh, I'm able to kind of unravel what's going on and figure out my thoughts. And he would just talk and talk and talk, but it was giving him this space. But I would listen, right? I wasn't interrupting like I used to do all the time with the masculine. I was learning. See, I was getting better. So anyway, in addition to that, oh, Robert, you said something else I wanted to comment on, but I'm gonna jump into the final thing. We have 1 minute that I'm gonna drop into this last thing, which is solving for overwhelm or frustration. And one of the things that really supports women in kind of settling down and coming out of the rush of things is just puttering, right? Is doing things without any aim. And so it's sometimes just walking around and putting things away or knitting, or like we wonder, why do women knit? Why do women, like, they can buy sweaters, they can buy, like, it's a lot cheaper actually to go and buy these things, but we do things that we're using our hands without thought, and there's no time limit. And this actually lets the feminine settle down into the space of the feminine. And what settles the masculine is sitting and having no aim as well, doing nothing, doing aka nothing, whereas that there's nothing to accomplish, there's nothing to do, and there's not doing anything with his hands, right? And so this is the two different ways, but we both need to come out of the overwhelm, out of the frustration. And there are ways to just honor each other in that. Like watching her go around and putter around or take extra long on her makeup and hair before a date. Like, it's that she has to settle into her feminine and come out of that space. And we can do that for ourselves. And we just go, I'm just going to go putter. I'm just puttering. I'm just sitting and recharging is what I call the masculine doing nothing. It's the recharging. If you see him recharging, then he can go out and provide and protect, right? If he comes into the home and immediately we're like, here's the baby, here's my project, here's my overwhelm, here's my emptying the basket, and he's like already in frustration mode or hasn't transitioned himself, then that can be a recipe for disaster, really. So my mother-in-law would always say, like, the first 20 minutes of being back together will set the tone for the entire evening. And I think that's really powerful. So anyway, that I wanted to wrap all of that up as tight as I could in the bag. We're going to stay on for a few more minutes to share and hear more thoughts. But if you need to hop off, that's the class. And thank you so much for being here. It's so fun to explore this world together. And I love how we got so many men involved, and ladies, I'd love to hear from you. And Jody, I wanted to hear from you. I saw your hand up. Your hand was up, so I'd love to hear from you before we jump on.
Well, I was just going to say that I appreciate the men being in the class as well and speaking up because it's really helpful. And it explains all my previous relationships to learn this information. I am realizing that by creating the space for myself to empty my basket, at an appropriate time, and to convey to my man the importance of allowing me to do that, it really, what it does for me is gives me space to listen to him with uninterrupted. Otherwise, I don't have any more room in the basket to listen to his 5-minute monologue. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, maybe it could be converse. Maybe men feel the same way, like, let me just get it out so I have space to listen to you, and which seems like it might be more of a problem, but I don't know. These are just thoughts that I had, and I wondered if you
I love that.
think about that.
And that brings up the idea that, like, I do my junk journaling, but when I junk journal, my partner doesn't actually hear what's real for me. And so if we can see this as a gift, like, what if emptying the basket was a sign that I trust you? I want you to know everything that's going on for me. I want you to, like, let you into my world. And that idea of, like, if a woman's not talking to you, then that's actually when to be concerned. Like, if you say, "How was your day, honey?" and she's like, "Good," you should be really worried. Like, and that generosity of that question, "How was your day?" is an invitation for her to empty her basket. And as long as there's, like, I don't want you to complain to me about what I'm not doing right, but it's, if you want to just tell me what's going on in your world, I want to listen because I want to know you. I want to witness you. I want to see you. And if she's just writing all her overwhelm onto a piece of paper and never sharing it with you, it's actually missing out, I think. Like, even with my sisters, I want to hear her basket, like her berry report. I just want to know my partner's, like, what's going on in his world and his monologue. I want to hear that because I love him and I want to know the whole thing of what's going on. So it's a generosity thing, and it's also a gift if we can see it in that way. KJ, what do you think about that? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I liked her definition of femininity, of like the innate desire to beautify things. I'm always, like, in my career field and whatnot, rewarded for masculinity and looking for more ways to embody and get into the feminine more. I've loved her work. It's really helped me just relax into asking to be provided for and all those kinds of things. I loved how she described the bucket of, like, getting a question in the middle is like pouring that straight back down your throat. And I totally feel that way. When I get a question in the middle and I'm like, oh, that's probably a really good sign for me of when I should preface to the person that I'm talking to, I'm not looking for solutions. I just need to get this off my head and, like, and just kind of empty this bucket and I'm feeling some overwhelm and just need to throw all these things out there, and I'm not looking for solutions. I don't know where to take it, but I do feel like what Allison said about women, there being, like, this masculinization of women, I feel like I see that really strongly, especially the age demographic and work demographic that I'm in. And so I don't know where I want to go with that, but I do think somewhere in my life I'll hopefully be able to help other women who, not that I've figured it all out myself, but that I think I've gotten a lot better at switching hats between work mode and not work mode. And I think that's really hard on our society and our young men too. That it's very hard for them to have a defined role of what used to be super clear is no longer easy for young men to know what they are able to provide without being offensive and things like that. So yeah, I just love eating up all of her work and and hearing you describe it. I'll be really excited to hear the comparison to the perfect aspect of every woman, because I've been struggling with that a little bit lately, being in the young Southern California beach volleyball community, and I'm on the older side. I'm playing with girls in their 20s in bikinis, but then I'm talking on conference calls to men in their 50s, and I'm a little too hard on myself, and so I'm excited for that future chapter.
Yeah, it's such a powerful kind of a releasing we're gonna do of the feminine, the perfect woman that can really control our experience and our thoughts. So I love everything you said. It's all so good, and it's all really powerful, that and work that we can bring into the world more and more as we learn it. And I see this butterfly effect of sharing this and empowering both men and women to step into more of it. And she talks a lot about this in other courses, but just what a loss to society it is as women are more masculine, and men become more effeminate and emasculated, that we actually lose out for both of us. It's a lose-lose experience for all of us. One thought that came was, I was talking to a friend who was saying she was in a work meeting, and the girls were really kind of, it was kind of like, let's tear down the patriarchy kind of conversation. But then in the same moment, someone was saying, and you should make sure that they don't do that to us. And then someone else says, and then in the same second, another girl says, but we don't need you to save us. And so it's like all of these, you need to protect us, because instinct is pulling her that way, but then instinct and programming is saying, yeah, but we don't need you, to protect us, but I'm not weak, right? And so it's just instinct is so fascinating. And as we start to become more aware of the tension in our body, and we're reacting from the tension, instinct, or whether we're acting from human spirit, then we can actually not create the total chaos that's happening in society, as we're emasculating him and then asking him to help us and then telling him that we really don't need him. And it's just confusing. It's confusing for all of us. So anyway, Robert, go ahead.
Sorry. One of the things I was thinking about is personality types, and that there are certain personality types that need sounding boards. I'm one of those types. So I will like to talk stuff out, because that's the way I process and I imagine and I generate stuff, So that can be out of a personality type, male or female, doesn't really matter, that they like to speak stuff out and have this. The person mainly as a sounding board, not as a person to tell them what to do, but just to get it out so they can figure it out for themselves. And it works in a great pattern that way. And then as a separate thing, I was thinking about what KJ was saying, and what a lot of people say about it being a masculine world, and this and the 9 to 5 and this sort of thing. And I remember talking to Tina about human design, and we were talking about how generators and manigens are probably the ones who set up the world, because they can work all day in their internal energy. And so they boom, so they're productive all the time. And the value that they're looking at is productive. And so for somebody who's a projector like me, who goes in, figures out something really fast, gets very powerful, and then on the beach resting afterwards, and they're like, look at that lazy fuck, and it's like, no, that's how my energy cycle works. It's different. So it's not just masculine, feminine. There's that aspect of it. And then to go over to Maya Rose, what she said about cycles. Okay, I find myself now sleeping a lot more, and I'm like, why? Why am I sleeping so much more? And I was beating myself up until yesterday when she went and she started to talk about the winter cycle and what happens in the winter cycle, and then I was like, oh, okay, it's normal. So I think the other part of all of this is that we have disconnected from our humanity, or the understanding of cycles and how connected we are to the planet, because of this you're supposed to work 9 to 5 all the time. It just disconnect, and that's what's jammed in our brain. So first we have to unprogram that part, and then we have to be okay with it's okay to be in this flow, because even for me, it's like flow, you're being lackadaisical, you're being lazy, you're being, there's all these negative comments about it that go through my head. And I'm like, I just want to be me.
I love the idea of bringing in, and part of, like, I truly believe that part of the point of living on this planet is to know thyself, to just get to know yourself. And this understanding men and understanding women is like, is just figuring out this one aspect of yourself. And then it's like, I mean, we're talking about cat people and dog people, and then there's Enneagram, which has, seven different kinds of people, and then you have your wings, and you have your integrations and your disintegrations, and there's the energy type that has 4 different people, and then there's, what's his name? Like, we just have all of these different amazing personality typing, which I really love. And human design is so incredible in the way that you like learn about yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, have you been following me my entire life? Like, how do they know this about me? But it helps you to further understand yourself and give yourself permission. And that's what it gives me, is like, when I learn about my children's energy type and who they are in the world, it gives them more permission in my understanding of to be the way that they are, and less of the, you're not like me and so you're doing it wrong, or you don't like the same things or talk about the same things or act the same way that I would. And it's just natural behavior instinct to want people to be like us because it's familiar and it's safe, and it puts us in the box and whatever. And so anyway, I just love that you can, like, this is part of this process, is just getting to know yourself better, and then giving permission to other people to be more of themselves. And whether it's masculine or feminine or cat or dog or number 7 or number 9 or, projector or generator, it's just, all of it is for us to better understand ourselves, and then have more compassion, not make other people as wrong.
Wrong, they're not as wrong now. To piggyback on that, one of the things that I found is that the more I've become comfortable with myself, the more secure I become in myself, is the less that I need other people to be like me to be okay. So the work that we do on ourselves, to be okay with ourselves, opens us up to have this beautiful thing of like, what's this other creature here? I'm secure in myself, so I get to see this other creature, and that whatever that creature is, whatever the and I'm kind of speaking about your kids in a way here, like, just watch them as another beautiful being, creature, whatever there, and be fascinated and curious in them without being vested in them being a certain way. And then it changes, it's like the Nat Geo of your kids, you know what I mean? So yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, it's so big. Like, my daughter is kind of like cat energy, and I'm totally dog. I'm like, love me more. She's like, huh? You can pet me as long as I want you to, and then I'll walk away. Like, it's just kind of like that, And when she's like wanting to, she'll come in and kind of like rub my leg, like, I'll let you love on me. But it was kind of like, am I doing something wrong? Why is my daughter like this? Like, why isn't she talking to me all day long? And why isn't she just like snuggling up to me like, I just thought that. And then when I learned about energy typing and everything, it was like, oh, it's just cat energy. She's just a 1-3 or whatever it is, like 4-1 or whatever. And I just kind of gave her like permission for her to be myself, and also didn't make me wrong so much as a mom, that my daughter wasn't bubbly and happy and talking my ear off all the time, So yeah, the same thing. Like, when you go, oh, she's talking my ear off. Oh yeah, she's a woman and she's got overwhelm, or she thinks that, like, or talking actually eases tension in her body because it's scaring away the squirrels and the tigers and the bears and everything else. Like, just kind of realizing, and as we go into the next chapter, you'll kind of learn more about women and safety and how actually talking eases tension. So it's just understanding, right? The big word, understanding. So thank you so much for staying on and for being part of this. I just love you all. You're so great. Have a great night. Thank you so much for all of your participation.